Yeah, there was a really famous cartoon back in the 80s, The Beatings Will Continue Until the Morale Improves.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always thought that was hilarious because it's so terrifyingly accurate.
And astonishingly, look, I'm embarrassed that I have a career. You know, I talk about things like trust and cooperation. Why is there demand for my work, you know? But the fact that there is, I'll take it as an opportunity.
Yeah.
But what's really sort of abominable is that this is not a new idea. Like, there are books galore and speeches galore and articles galore about what leadership is. You know, and we all kind of say the same thing from a different angle, so you can pick your flavor, whichever message resonates most with you, and yet people don't do it. What's the hang up? And so I get this question a lot, which is, what are the most important characteristics about being a leader? You know, vision, charisma, you know? I know some spectacular leaders who don't have big Steve Jobsian visions. They're just not visionary, you know? And I know some spectacular leaders who really don't have a lot of charisma. They kind of just shuffle around, and you're like, that's the guy? That's the guy, right? And they're spectacular, and people will give blood, sweat, and tears for these people. The one thing I am comfortable saying that all effective leaders must have is courage, because it is hard. It is hard to stand up against outside pressure. It is hard to stand up to an external constituency who's pushing you to do something for their short-term gain, to do the right thing for your people. It is hard. It is thankless. It is lonely. Sometimes you get fired. Sometimes you get in trouble. Sometimes you'll lose your job, and the next guy will get all the credit. It's all true. And the courage to do the right thing in the face of overwhelming pressure, only the best leaders have that courage. Only the best leaders. And here's the folly. Courage is not some deep internal fortitude. You don't dig down deep and find the courage, right? It just doesn't exist. Courage is external. Our courage comes from the support we feel from others. In other words, when you feel that someone has your back, when you know that the day that you admit you can't do it, someone will be there and say, I got you. You can do this. That's what gives you the courage to do the difficult thing. It's not going off to an ashram by yourself somewhere for 4 weeks and coming back and finding the courage. It's not what happens. It's the relationships that we foster. It's the people around us who love us and care about us and believe in us. And when we have those relationships, we will find the courage to do the right thing. And when you act with courage, that in turn will inspire those in your organization to also act with courage. In other words, it's still an external thing. That's what inspiration is, right? I'm inspired to follow your example. But those relationships that we foster over the course of a lifetime will not only make us into the leaders we need to be and hope we can be, but they'll often save your life. They'll save you from depression, they'll save you from giving up, they'll save you from any matter of negative feelings about your own capabilities, your own future. When someone just says, I love you, and I will follow you no matter what.
So I want to talk about that for a second. Why do you think that something so innate, so deeply ingrained in us as love is so, like just yesterday, I can't believe this is true, this is actually true, I'm not making this up. Just yesterday, this will mean something to you guys, I looked Ron Penna in his eyes and I said, I love you. And I said it like 100%, he's my business partner, I said it 100% sincerely. It was just one of those moments where you wanna connect and remember, but that's so weird, like I don't do that often. And it's so interesting that it becomes out of context, maybe is the best way to say it, because like at home with my wife, it's so easy and I love to embody it and I love to feel it and it makes me feel awesome. But then I come into the office and there's something about the context that makes it weird.
Yes, two perspectives. One is, this is what vulnerability is, right? Being vulnerable doesn't mean crying. Being vulnerable means willing to admit you made a mistake. Being vulnerable is the willingness to say, I need help. Being vulnerable is the willingness to express the feelings you have towards someone without fear of what other people may think of you by making that expression. And most people, especially if they don't have a trusting environment or a strong corporate culture, most people don't want to feel vulnerable. It's dangerous to feel vulnerable. If you admit you made a mistake or you don't know what you're doing, you've been promoted into a job that you have no clue or no business being in that job, lying, hiding, and faking is a much better option, right? But for the fact that it's more stressful and ultimately the results will falter, right? It's counterintuitive. But that's what a strong environment means. It means I can be vulnerable. So the fact that you can say that out loud means that there's a loving, trusting culture here that is okay with you being vulnerable. Nobody's thinking, oh my God, this company's going downhill, this guy's nuts. He's blubbering all over the place, you know? That's not what people are thinking. I mean, some people are probably thinking of it. But generally, that's not what people are thinking. If anything, people are going, cool. And that then inspires them to feel that they can also express vulnerability, like admit a mistake, like say they screwed up, like say they need help, that say, they want to offer help to someone and not fear that either. So that's one perspective. The other reason why stuff that I talk about or that you're talking about now is so often ignored is just because it's hard to measure. How do you measure leadership? How do you measure?
That's going to be one of my questions.
How do you measure trust? They lack good metrics. It's very easy to measure revenues and profits and market share. So let's focus on those things because I can like pull a lever here and see what happens over there.
Right.
But in terms of like trust, I'll pull a lever here and I won't see anything for 6 months. So it's not that I don't know that it exists. Everybody talks about the importance of culture, yet nobody seems to be focused on building it. I've never met a CEO in my life who doesn't think people are important, and yet every day they're making decisions that prioritize a number over a person, that literally don't care about people. They make decisions that literally brush people aside. Because it's hard to measure. In an ultra speedy, algorithmic world that we live in, what gets measured gets done. These things are measurable, just not in the short term.